You've heard of mentoring in the marketplace. You've heard of mentoring in schools. But perhaps you haven't heard of the mentoring in the community through Austin Metropolitan Ministries, one called the Community Mentoring Network. To learn more about that, stay with us on today's Austin Faith Dialogue.
Austin Faith Dialogue, at the crossroads of religion and life. A series highlighting the cultural and social interactions between the worshiping and religious communities in and around the capital city. Austin Faith Dialogue is brought to you by the Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KXAN. Join us now in Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, in behalf of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, welcoming you to this edition of the show. Today we're having an opportunity to look at one of the programs of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, and that is the Community Mentoring Network. It's one that pairs adult mentors with youth mentees, particularly in conjunction with the Gardner Betts Juvenile Center here in town. We have the director of the Community Mentoring Network, John Williams, that we're delighted to have join us today, John.
Thank you. Good morning.
And we're also delighted to have Elisa Castro-Lugo, who is one of the mentees, or the mentors for a mentee. I have to get my terminology straight here. But you have a young person that you're working with.
Right.
And John, you're the one who's helping set up these relationships. And tell us a little bit about how CMN began and how many young folks it's serving.
Well, I believe that CMN was a brainchild back in 93, 94, and the AMN was thinking about how can they help the youth of the city and the community, and I think that they decided that working with the juvenile justice system was a viable way of helping the youth. So the Community Mentoring Network was born. It came on board in about 1994, and 95 was the real initial first match of a mentor and a mentee.
Okay. Now this is with young folks who have been in trouble with the law one way or the other.
Yes, they are.
And the Gardner Betts is the facility that you work with most closely?
Well, most closely, but we also work with the Austin Area Urban League because we are working with the municipal courts as well as the county.
I see. Okay. So you have connections not just to the community but to the public sector as well.
Well, we are trying to serve as many youth as we can here in the local community.
Well, I'd like to just turn from the larger picture to the individual one. Lisa, how did you get involved with the Community Mentoring Network?
Well, the first thing was I read an ad in the Austin Chronicle in the community section, and they were asking for mentors, and they were stating when the next training session will be for mentors. And I've been interested for a while in mentoring, but I really hadn't found like an organization that was really asking for it.
I see.
And when I saw the ad, I contacted Austin Metropolitan Ministries, and I attended a training session, and I met John, and eventually I got matched with Anne-Marie, who's my mentee.
All right. So you have a young woman that you're working with.
Right.
And how long have you been doing that?
Since August of last year.
Okay, so going on 5 to 6 months at this point. And how long do the mentor-mentee relationships usually last? Have you got some idea about the average time?
Well, it's hard to talk about averages because we have some relationships that have been going on now for 4 years, over 4 years. Yeah, some very long-term, stable relationships. And since we train every month, we match up mentors and mentees every month. So we have some really fresh relationships also.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would think that the long-term ones are really just people almost become like extended family to each other that way.
One would hope. You know, we can never have too much family. And people that we can really feel that are a support system.
What kinds of problems have the young folks had?
Well, we usually deal with first-time offenders or minor offenders. We work with nonviolent youth. So they have done curfew violations. They've been caught in possession of tobacco, some marijuana, maybe alcohol. They've been driving under the influence, shoplifting. We get a full gamut of the types of offenses, but usually they're Class C misdemeanors.
Okay. So that's not people that necessarily have had long time in prison sort of thing. I mean, it's sort of when they're beginning to get into trouble rather than later on.
Well, we like to look at it as a delinquency prevention program.
Okay.
Okay, so we try to get them at the front end, but we get referrals and we try to screen to the best of our ability, not so much on offense, but on relationships. We look at mentors and what their interests are, and we look at the mentee and what their interests are, and we try to get them together.
Okay, well, let's take your interests, Lisa. What is your background? Where do you come from that you were even interested in picking up on this ad in the Chronicle, that you wanted to do it?
Oh, well, background, I've had a very long military background. And I was also a student at the time at UT. And I've been looking to somehow get more in touch with the youth. I mean, I know I look young, but I don't feel as young as I look. And so many times I thought that I was kind of, I didn't get a lot of things. And, I wanted to help. And I think I consider myself a good role model. And I thought I could help somebody. And that's why I ended up answering the ad.
What kind of a military background have you had?
I was in the Air Force for 4 years, active duty, and 4 years in the National Guard here in Texas.
Wow, that's great. And then you came back and went to school, and
Right.
so you have. I wouldn't say that academics is not real life experiences, but you've had.
Well, it can be. It can be.
But and then you found that you were working with this young lady. What have you been doing with her? What does a mentor do with a mentee?
We spend time together. Basically, that's the number one thing. I listen to her. I ask about her schoolwork. We try to find things that we like in common. And I try to introduce to her certain things that she's never experienced before, like go to certain events or do certain activities that she's never done before.
You hang out.
Yeah, we hang out.
Yeah. Is that what most mentors do, is just to be a friend and that sort of thing?
Well, yeah, we want them to have fun, but it's also a focused relationship because we want them to work on goal setting and all, so that the youth can go from where they are now to someplace in the future and feel good about themselves. So they do all kinds of activities, though. Even CMN sponsors activities for the mentor and the mentee so that they'll have group-type activities to do and that they can meet other mentors and mentees.
Okay, so it's not just necessarily Lisa and her mentee by themselves out there, but you can get together with others who are doing the same thing?
Right.
Yeah, like you've done that already since August.
We had a picnic not so long ago. I think it was back in October, and there were a few other, I want to say couples, but more like mentors, mentees.
And I think that the thing that, for people who are not familiar with what this relationship means, what difference it can make. Have you been here working at it long enough that you can see that it's made some difference in some lives of either the mentors or the mentees?
Well, of course. Like when you see a good match, you can see it from the beginning. You can see the expression in the youth's face, the mentor, and the way that they start to bond. I spent about the first meeting I meet with them, and I try to make an assessment about, is this relationship going to work, and is it going to be beneficial to both individuals? Because the mentee isn't the only one that's learning in this relationship. The mentor learns a lot about him or herself also.
You're shaking your head as if you agree with that.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
What have you learned?
You just opened my eyes, very wide.
Really?
Yeah, things are, I didn't go to school here in the United States, but still, things are very, very different. And you can criticize, from one side, not knowing what what they really are experiencing in school. But it's different when you listen to, in my case, I listen to my mentee, and she, tells me, what's going on in high school, nowadays, problems that girls encounter in high school and all that, and it's amazing. It's a lot that they have to put up with, and that I didn't really consider it or didn't look at it that way before.
So it's opened your eyes.
Yes, it has.
And has she indicated to you that that's been of help for her, for you to kind of reflect with her on what her experience is and maybe talk about some options and that sort of thing?
Options as in...
As to what, if she's confronting some issues in school or temptations or whatever, that you can talk this over with her and she's opened up to you and said that that's been helpful to her?
She has opened up to me, but I don't think it has come up to the level of saying this has been helpful to me. She's quiet, but I can see that it has helped her. Her grades have improved greatly.
Okay.
She's been out of trouble the whole time.
All right.
So and she even picked up a hobby in the meantime. So.
Oh, really?
Great.
A hobby?
She's in dancing now.
She's in dancing. I was going to say, well, now that is measurable progress. That there are new experiences, and I think probably the fact if the mentees don't get in trouble again,
Right.
you've got one very clear evidence of that. Or if their grades pick up, as she says, you've seen this in other cases as well.
Oh yeah, well, one of the things that I look at is that I want to know what type of activities are they doing, and if they are meeting face to face. I think that's the best way to build a relationship, if you're sitting there with somebody and you're sharing the environment together. We ask them to do other types of sharing, like on the telephone, if you go out, write them a letter or whatnot. But that face-to-face contact is so important.
Yeah. I think that's the thing oftentimes missing, even in home situations. If there's not somebody that takes the individual interest as close to home, or if the schools are too crowded, or whatever it is in our society today that leaves people without that one-to-one kind of experience with each other. And you're saying this is what happens. That's you're based on that one-to-one.
Right. And I think it gives the youth an opportunity to know that somebody does care and that they will listen to them and accept them and support them.
Okay. Well, I think that we're going to have to take a break here in just a few seconds, but when we come back, I'd like to explore a little bit more in terms of how this ties into the religious community. Austin Metropolitan Ministries is an ecumenical organization that not only sponsors your program, but is connected to Austin Faith Dialogue as well.
Right.
And to the county, to the city. You mentioned some other connections here that we'll explore. But we're going to do that in just a few seconds here. If you folks would stay with us, we'll be returning for the second half of today's Austin Faith Dialogue. Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue, where today we're having a discussion about the Community Mentoring Network. It's a program with youthful offenders through the Austin Metropolitan Ministries. And we're talking with John Williams, who's the director of that program, and also with Elisa Castro-Lugo, who is a mentor. In the first half, we were kind of discussing about how long the program's been around. One thing I didn't ask, though, is how many youth are being served currently?
We have 35 matched pairs.
Okay. Right now, you've got 34 other people like Elisa who are working with young folks.
Right.
And who gives you the names of these young people that need help?
We get referrals from Garden of Bets and from the Austin Area Urban League. And we have a system that we've worked really hard to set up a system that we get appropriate referrals and they refer to youth, and then we do an intake on the youth. We go out and we ask them a lot of questions about, what are their interests, what is their ideal mentor, and we meet with the parents also, because it's very important to have the parents involved in this relationship.
Yeah. Somebody coming into the home and maybe picking up the child.
Right. Right. And the support of the relationship is real good from the parent standpoint, because for one, we let them know that the mentor is not there to take their place. The mentor is not there to be a babysitter either. So it's a delicate balance about how do you work together, and the mentor usually is a new addition to the family. And how do you work out relationships? Mentoring and AMM is all about relationships. How do you foster good quality relationships so that everybody grows?
Have you been in the home of your mentee to meet the parents?
Yes.
And they're supportive of what you're doing?
Her mom is, yes.
They're what now? Sorry?
Her mom.
Her mother is, okay.
Yes.
And that you've gotten some feedback from the mother to say we're glad that you're working with my daughter?
Not that kind of feedback, more like letting me know that if there's a problem with Anne-Marie, to come to her and speak to her.
Okay. But I'm sure that that's a great support to parents who feel that it's like, as we were saying before, extended family, in effect. And, one thing, as you were talking about this, I was remembering Colin Powell and having this chairing this national gathering, I guess with the president several years ago, that was talking about reaching out to youth in the country, and the big emphasis there was on mentoring. I think maybe Patrick Flood, the executive director of AMM, went to that meeting and came back with some input locally on that score. I mean, is anybody else in here that you know of that's had that inspiration, that national one, which I think came after we were starting it locally?
Well, as a part of a local mentoring network, the Austin Travis County Mentoring Network, where we sit down and we talk about mentoring with other programs that are doing mentoring here in the area, and we try to coordinate our efforts.
Okay, so there are other programs. How many other programs are there?
Well, we're just starting to really try to work together. Usually we have about 7 different programs there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Big Brothers, Big Sisters is represented.
Right.
St. Edwards, the Austin Independent School District sends representatives, and some smaller programs also.
Okay, so this is not the only game in town as far as mentoring is concerned. But is there something distinctive about what you're doing?
Well, yes, we work with youth in the juvenile justice system. That's our niche, is that we have chosen a mission that I think will save society in the long run, not only money, but it will help build the values, the moral fiber of our society. I think in a lot of ways that since our society has changed so much that I don't know if we've lost stuff, but it's just different. I don't think that adults spend as much time with youth as they used to.
Yeah.
And I think mentors are making a valuable contribution to say, yes, I value the time that I spend with you.
Yeah. How much time do you spend with your mentee?
On average, at least 2 hours a week.
2 hours a week. Okay. And certain day a week, like on the weekend, or?
Right. Usually on the weekend, a Saturday evening or Sunday evening.
You got a job during the day, don't you?
Yes.
What do you do?
I work at Chase Bank downtown. I'm an operations clerk.
Okay. So This is something that you do as a community service, and
Right.
you know, it's interesting to me though that you said that you did this through the Austin Chronicle. When being an AMM organization, how many of these mentors do you recruit through the churches or the congregations?
It saddens me to say that 95% of our mentors we get through the mass media. We advertise on the radio, in the Chronicle, the Austin American Statesman, some other smaller like the La Prensa or Reba. You know, we are on TV. We try our best to reach out. I go out to a lot of congregations and I talk about what not only AMM does in general, but what we do at the Community Mentoring Network in specifics, and try to get people energized and enthusiastic. And every time I think about it, I have to take my hat off and applaud the mentors that we have, because we ask them to do hard work. Okay, and when you're out there at the congregations talking, okay, you have on the average 15 to 20 people in the room, and it meets one of our goals is to educate the community about the needs of youth, but usually it's just an exercise in education.
I see.
Okay.
You don't have too many people come up afterwards and say, I want to be a mentor.
Well, if you got 20 people in the room, you're lucky if one of them will say that and seriously mean that they will make that commitment.
Because it means going and getting some training.
Training.
What kind of training did you get, Lisa? What did they do?
Just the initial training.
How long was that? I mean, what did it involve?
Well, listening to him mostly for about 2.5 hours.
You listened to him for 2.5 hours? Oh my gosh, that's all the training you got? Well, but you learned something, huh?
Yes. I mean, he gave us guidelines, things that have worked in the past, things that we should do, goal setting. That was one of the main things that we were supposed to be doing.
And some things not to do as well?
Right.
Like what?
For example, not try to be their parents.
Okay.
Not try to be the mentees' parents, or set a good example for them, but be consistent. I remember that rule. Be consistent on the rules that you set out for the relationship. And even if you really feel not sorry, but if you really, really want to help the mentee, like in financial way, that you should abstain from doing that.
You're not supposed to be giving them money to bail them out one way or the other.
Right.
Well, don't you think that she passed her test of being in your class very well just now? I mean, she remembered all that stuff that you said to her.
Well, like I said, I think we have really good, committed people. Okay, once they become mentors, they become even better people, and you can't say enough about a person that is willing to spend time with someone that usually, once a youth enters the juvenile justice system, people get very negative, stereotypical thinking about them. You know, the youth get a bad rap in society already today, but when they start going down a path that most people see is contrary to society's mores, you know, they are very well labeled.
So wary of that.
Yeah. You know, because I think a lot of times adults fear youth anyway. You know, especially the age groups we work with. Our average age is, what, 13 to 15? How old is your mentee?
15.
Right. And so starting to become young adults, you know, and so they're opinionated, okay? And so it's hard sometimes for people to listen to people and not be judgmental.
Right.
Okay, it's okay to get some insight, which I think Elisa does a very good job of, insight into where her mentee's coming from. And she doesn't judge her, but she tries to present her with options.
I see. Okay.
And you know, my training, because I think it's an ongoing evolution, I call Elisa a lot to just check in and say, well, how's things going? Because I think that she has enough experience in relationship building that I don't need to teach her anything about that. What I end up being is a consultant and a support to her.
Well, I think you're lucky to have Lisa, I mean, with her background in the military and as well as her education and all, that she has a lot to offer. And I think that you probably have learned a lot from John, too, in terms of his background. What brought you to this work, John?
Well, Elisa and I have a lot in common because I spent 6 years in the Air Force and 2 years in the reserves, and so I have, by training, I am a social worker.
I see.
So, and it has taken me a long time to define myself, because I like social work because you can be kind of eclectic and whatnot, but it took me a long time to define myself as a youth worker, even though I've worked with youth for over 20 years.
I see. And you feel that your military training helped in that regard, too, to lead you in this direction?
Well, I think that the military teaches you discipline, okay? And it helps you do your self-analysis, too. It gives you a time out so that you're around people, that it's not all fun and games in the military and it's not all strict discipline. It is a good opportunity for you to look at who you are, where you're going, and, set some goals for yourself.
Right. One of the things, too, it occurs to me is that with that military background that you both have, you relate to law enforcement folks, I mean, at the city and the county level. And I suspect that they like working with you.
Well, it's about relationships again, because I think that if you go into a situation and you respect people, and you take responsibility for yourself, then you can almost go and do anything you want.
Where is Gardner Betts?
Gardner Betts is at Congress at Old Torf.
Okay.
And one of the things that I would like to say is that they are expanding Gardner Betts.
Do they hold youth offenders overnight and for a period of time?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
They do. That's what they're expanding, the facility that will house more youth. I think they're built now to house 70 to 80 youth. I think that they're going to more than double their capacity.
Wow.
And so I think that we are in the prevention business, okay, because I would like to make at least one of those beds available over there, and that my mentee or somebody that we're serving is not in the system, because we do know that people have a tendency to go down a road unless somebody stops them.
All right. And speaking of stopping, that's what we're going to do. We're just out of time.
Okay.
But we really want to thank you, John Williams and Lisa, for being with us. And you folks be with us again next week on Austin Faith Dialogue. And I'm Richard Thompson, on behalf of Austin Metropolitan Ministries, extending peace to each and every one of you. Good day.